can define good names. So what we are going to do is select the character, shift click, select the rig, and press Ctrl P and with automatic weight. Now if you select the character, you can see that in the vertex groups we have a lot of new groups that are corresponding to the name of the bones, and basically it added some weights for each vertex, for each vertices that are going to follow some of the bones. So for instance, if we select this character, enter in edit mode, automatically Blender has set to some vertex to follow a bone in particular. So sorry, if I'm selecting the armature in pose mode and rotating my character, you can see that it already started to move and look deformable. The issue we have is that for now, if we look at the modifier stack, we have a new modifier called the armature, and this armature modifier is trying to deform the mesh after the subdivision surface happened. I don't want this. I want to move it below everything. And we also are going to check the preserve volume option in order to make it work a bit better, and you can see that the deformations already looks much nicer like this. We have a lot of work to do though, but this is going to be fine. So now what I want to do is to check what Blender has done for me for the legs. You can see it's quite bad. We are going to fix that. Same thing for the ears. You can see that it's quite bad too, but we again are going to fix that. One thing that I want to do is to open a new window by dragging the corner like this. And here I want to be in material preview, and I want to remove the overlays so it will show me only my character. This is going to be a good helper for me to see how my character deforms in the final stage. Of course, we don't have the subdivision surface activated in the viewport, so you expect a better looking result when we'll add it back later on. But for now, I prefer to work with the actual geometry. Okay, one thing that we can add also on top is maybe the wireframe. So in this panel, you can add the wireframe, and this is going to be okay like this. So I want the eyes also to follow the eye bone. So in order to do this, I'm going to select the eye, shift click the armature, press Ctrl Tab to enter in pose mode, and select the bone that is going to be the parent of this object, and then I'm going to press Ctrl P and bone. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the other bone. So select the eye, select the bone, in pose mode, press Ctrl P, bone. And if you move the target now, the eyes are looking around and following the object, as you can see. Okay. So this is one thing done. The thing that I don't like is when it's stretching a lot, you can see that the eyes are going out of their socket. So we will paint the influence of some vertices around the eyes to always follow the head and not being deformed by the stretch. So in order to do this, let's stay in this pose because it's a very extreme pose, and let's select the armature first, then shift click then go back in object mode and shift click the mesh and press Ctrl Tab in order to go into weight paint mode. The weight paint mode is the mode where you can paint the influence of the bones on the mesh that you are currently weight painting. You have different brush that will help you paint the weights, and we have different settings that before continuing we need to be sure that are checked to ease the process. The first thing is in the options here, you want to check the auto normalize option. Okay, then in the if you press M in the tool settings, you want to activate vertex groups X symmetry, meaning that when you're going to paint the influence on one bone on one side, it's going to be replicated to the other side. As you can see, Blender in this panel has created for us other groups, and if we switch between them, you can see that it represents the influence of the bone. Red meaning maximum influence, blue meaning zero influence or less influence. And actually you can see that I have a black representation, and this is because I've checked the option active for the zero weight, and this is showing me where there is no weight at all, no influence at all. So you have all your groups there, but there is a nicer way to edit the groups, is to select the bones by pressing Ctrl. So if you press Ctrl, you can see that you can select the bones. When it's purple, it means that this bone is not deforming. Okay. So in the case of the head, we are going to paint using the add around the eyes to make sure that the eyes are always following the character. At least the head, sorry. So you paint the head area, you can paint it like this. Let's paint a bit more in red, and for now it's going to be okay like this. Okay, we don't want anything else to move with something else. We only want the head. So if you want, you can also disable temporarily one eye. This is going to be useful in order to see the weights inside. So again, here we want to paint the inner eye, so we are sure that the head will be stuck with the head bone. Okay. Again, rigging, weight painting, it's a very iterative process, so you're going to iterate over the different weights that you are creating. Okay. So one thing to note is that we've checked the auto-normalized option in the options here. This is ensuring us that we have our vertex are at the maximum of 100% influence. If you don't do this, Blender will go over 100% and create weird behaviors. So for instance, this vertex here is shared between the head and probably the body, but at the end it has a 100% influence, meaning that it is probably equally balanced between those two bones. Okay, maybe a bit of this one, but we are going to fix that. Okay, so here it's the influence of the head, and we want to use the blur brush then. So maybe I can add a bit of the muzzle and a bit of this part too, like this, to create a smoother transition. And now I'm going to use the blur brush in order to blur my lines, and I really want to look at the lines that are forming by my geometry, my topology, and I really want to have something nice. So let's add this one too, this one to the head too, like this. I don't want the mask to be moving that much. And you know what? I'm also going to twist my character because it's going to be a very, very extreme pose. And I'm going to control click on this part, and I'm going to blur it also a bit. Let's blur it like this, and let's create a nice transition between everything there. Okay. Always check in this view. It's going to be easier to see. So we still have good deformation in this case, I think. I can press Alt-R to cancel. Here the character is looking nice. I can maybe add a touch around the crease there. From the back it's not great, so let me stretch the back a bit with the blur. Here it's okay. And around the ears it's probably bad, so I'm going to for sure blur this, and I'm going to try to stretch the controller of the ear. So let me reset everything. Let me go in the very bad and complex and extreme pose, and let me check what everything is doing. So in this case, this vertex that is poking through, I'm going to add it back to the head. And now I'm going to try to stretch the ear backward like this, very, very hard. You can see that I can, for this bone that is deforming, I can blur a bit the thing. Maybe it's too much. So one thing to note is that if you have the other parts, you can also blur it, and because we checked this symmetry with vertex group, it's going to work. Maybe here I can remove it. So if you cannot with blur work with it, you can subtract, or subtract here or here. Maybe it's being added to another bone. Maybe it's there. Yes, it was added to the spine. So I'm removing a bit of the weight from the spine to the top there. It shouldn't be there anyway. Okay, make sure that everything is working fine. So here I can come back and I can maybe remove a bit the influence of the ear around there, because the ear shouldn't, oh, sorry, shouldn't stretch that too much. So maybe I can blur from the ear, I can blur a bit like this. Okay, so I guess this is going to work well for us. Let me check when the character is down a bit. So we still have the head motion. We still have the ear that is working much nicer. You can see that now we don't have a huge deformation around it, like it was the case before. Oh, we still have some vertices behind that are moving. We don't want this, so you weight paint them, and you are going to remove them by using the subtract brush. Let's select the body right now, and now we are going to do the same process for the leg. So when I stretch the leg, you can see that a lot of things are coming with it. We don't want this, so I'm going to remove a lot of this. And I'm going to push that leg forward and stretch it. I'm going to again select this leg, and maybe here I can blur. Around it, not too much. I'm going to blur also the body, but maybe the body here should be much more overlapping around the leg. So let me add a bit more mass there. Like this. Again, we are pushing the character in very extreme poses, which is the best way to set up this kind of cartoony character, I think. Okay, so here it's pushing back the joint inside, and here it's pushing back in front. So it's not perfect, but I think it's going to be alright for now. Maybe we will have to add some deformation bones later on. We'll see, we'll check. One thing for sure that I've noticed that is bad is when I'm stretching, the bottom here is stretching too much. So probably in this case, I will add some bones that are going to constrain that. I don't know if maybe I can add weight to the pelvis. I'm going to try to remove in the bone options, I'm going to try to remove the restriction for the pelvis to deform, and I'm going to try to weight paint the pelvis. So to do that, I remove the pelvis. I check the deform option in the pelvis. I shift click the mesh, I go back to weight paint. You see it's violet, it's magenta, and I can add geometry, and it will automatically create a group called pelvis for us. Maybe this is going to help us maintain the geometry a bit better, so I can add some weight to the bottom there, maybe a bit more in fact. Let's add more, like this. Let's also add a bit of geometry for the back, maybe it's going to help us with the legs. And let's blur that. Let's blur also the spine. Come back to the pelvis. The leg, maybe blur a bit the leg. I have a vertex here that is very well defined. Very well stretched, sorry. So I'm going to blur this here as much as possible. Let's add back this one. Let's push this one a bit. This one, you see, when I'm pushing it, it's going too far. So what I can do is I can lower my intensity by pressing Shift F. It's going to add less weight. Maybe something like this. Okay, we'll have to check if when I'm coming down, it's maintaining the geometry a bit better. So yes, of course, I cannot go further than this, because you can see that it's stretching too much there. Maybe I can add a bit of geometry, a bit of weight from the pelvis to maintain the butt area, like this. Not too much, but just a touch. It's starting to look a bit weird, but anyway, it's maybe doing the work. Maybe on the hips too. Let's blur that. Let's check. So again, we can twist. The twist looks still okay. We can stretch. Looks still okay. We can squash. Looks kind of okay. It was looking better with a bit more weight down here. So let me add a bit more weight to the pelvis. Create a nicer curve like this. I can add a bit more weight to this here, maybe to the spine this time. The leg is still going fine. As you can see now, I have a restricted motion, and this is good because it looks like everything is working fine, except that we are moving vertices to the opposite side. I don't want this, so I'm going to subtract them. Okay, maybe I need to add this vertex a bit more to the leg, so I'm going to blur it. Maybe I'm going to do the same with the back here a bit. You can see it's deforming a much better like this. Okay, so let's check. I have my body, my pelvis, that, by the way, I can turn around if I want to do a dance. When I'm turning it around, it's doing something like this, which is okay. The stretch is still doing fine. Maybe, you know what, I'm going to add even more weight to the pelvis. So let's select the pelvis and add some weight in the front by using add. Not too much, just a touch like this that we are going to blur anyway. I'm going to create like a sort of a belt, sort of a underwear, sorry. Something like this, just to test. Yes, it's keeping the weight a bit better, but it's not here. I'm going to blur, of course, everything, so it's not doing it too much. Creating a nicer transition. I can maybe add more weight to the leg on this part. let's add to a bit more weight to the spine. So you can see it's just a question of testing, adding a bit, testing how it looks, blurring things. At the end you want to blur as much as possible to create nicer looking transitions. I feel it starts to come along. Going to add more stretch to this location. Again, trying to blur. Let's blur everything like this. Okay. So now, if I'm selecting my mesh, clearing everything, I think I have a much better deformation right now. It's stretching, squashing. I can still twist. The twist in the relaxed pose is still working quite fine. I have the stretch that is looking much nicer, but I can still do better. And in order to do a better job, what I'm going to do is, so first I also need to check, of course, the legs. So the legs are doing fine, except that it's taking here too much weight from there. So I don't want the belly to be impacted as much as that. So this is okay, it's better. Remember, we are animating a floor sack, not a full human. So okay, it's quite nice, but you can see that sometimes here it's very harsh in terms of deformation. So what we can do is we can apply on top of that, on top of the armature, a modifier called the smooth corrective modifier. And we're going to put it above the armature, and this is going to help us smooth the deformation basically. And you can see that it works a bit nicer, but sometimes you lose volume when you do that, so be careful not to use it too much. Okay. And one thing that I want to do is I want to protect my eyes from this modifier, because sometimes, as I said, we are losing volumes, so I don't want to lose volumes for my eyes. So I'm going to select my eyes. So deselect everything, just select the loop of around the eyes for both eyes. Deselect anything else. Control plus multiple time. And I'm going to create, with this selection, I'm going to create a new vertex group that I'm going to call Protect Smooth. Let's move it on top. And I'm going to assign with a 100% weight to this. If you're looking in the viewport, if you select this Protect Smooth, you can see that you have something like this. You can blur a bit the result around your eyes like this. And this mask, we are going to fit it in the corrective smooth here, Protect Smooth. But we want the reverse, meaning that we want to affect everything that is not in this mask. Okay, so it should now apply, but not for the eyes. So if we select our character and we remove that, you can see the difference. The smooth is being applied on and off. We can even move the factor to 1. You can see it gives even more smoothness, but again, we're losing volume a lot. So you can also repeat as much as you want. Be careful with that because it's very consuming. It's not very effective in terms of performances. But in this case, because the character is simple and because we are not that much concerned with performances, I guess I can use maybe 6 repetition with a factor of 1. Okay. In other software, it's called Delta Mesh, this operator, and it is very well known. So you can see also here when I'm moving this, it's not a good sign that the body is moving. So, and let me check if I have other issues like this. No, it should be okay. So what I want to do is select my mesh, select my ear, and remove the paint here. I don't know why it was doing this. Okay, let's go back to the ear. It's not deforming anything else. Here it's okay. The pelvis is doing fine. The cool thing now is that because we added a bit of weight, we can turn the pelvis around and it moves. We can do the Mr. Bean the Mr. Bean pose. And I think we are good to go with this character. Now we'll add some facial expression using shape keys. Okay, so this will be the next stage is to create blinks for the eyes. So let's do that right now. So in order to add the shape keys for the eyes, we're going to isolate our character mesh like this, but we are going to select everything but only one eye. So it's going to be easier for us to create the shape keys. What I want to do is I want to protect myself from touching other vertices. So I'm going to select the inner part of my eye and I'm going to press Ctrl plus multiple times like this. And I'm going to press Shift H. I don't want to touch any other vertex for my shape key. So here in the shape key panel in object mode, we are going to add a base key that is going to represent the state by default. And then we are going to add another key, and this key is going to be top eyelid.R because it's going to be the right eyelid that we're going to move down. So we are going now to use the connected proportional editing, pressing Alt-O. And we are going to put the value of the shape keys to 1. So before doing that, make sure you're in edit mode and that the value is 1 there. And we are going slightly but surely to lower the top eyelid. So one important thing to notice is that the corners shouldn't move that much. Only the top part of the eyelid should go down like this. So this is going to be a very tedious process, but if done correctly, this is going to work pretty well. Make sure you're not going too far from the original pose, otherwise it will look weird when you animate it. And sometimes it's also good to remove the proportional editing and to make sure that the lines are spreading correctly like this. Okay, so this is one probably shape key. You can see that the eyes is going down. We can maybe go inside now. Make sure the geometry inside is working properly too, keeping the thickness of the eyelid correct. One thing that is really cool that is in Blender you can press Shift B and drag a box and it's going to center your view around the zone that you've selected. This is something really useful to tweak, to go in very tiny sections. So this is the top eyelid that I can move down. Make sure that the inside is matching a bit with the rest. Okay. It's very important that when you close the eye, it's the top eyelid that is coming down and the bottom eyelid is not moving that much, okay? So something like this is okay. I think that I've moved too much the inside corner, so I'm going to compensate for it by moving it up a bit. Or maybe just the other side, in fact. The corner there, moving it down just a bit. Yes, it's much better like this for me. And I'm going to make the other eye reappear by pressing Alt H. And you can see that we will have an issue. The eye, because it's round and the shape key is going straight to the point to the final position. It's linear. Sorry. We'll have an issue, and we'll have to add a correction shape key that will correct the roundness of the eye. So we are going to call that top eyelid correct.r, and this shape, when the top eyelid is at 0.5, so in semi-close, we want this at 1 to be pushed forward. Okay, so we are going to compensate for that, and we are going to create a mechanism that will automatically blend those shape keys for us with only one slider. Something like this. So we're just compensating for the roundness. So so this is the correction. You can see that it's just pushing a bit forward the eyelid. And when this is at 1, the correction will be at 0. So the top eyelid here still should be at the end a bit bulgier. So I'm going to do that very carefully, following the shape of the eye. Okay, making sure everything is correct right there. So you can see that it's going down, but in the middle, this will push a bit forward to compensate for the lack of volume in the rotation. So we're going to use that a bit later, but now what I want to do is I want to do the lower eyelid. So bot eyelid.r. I'm going to put the value to 1. I'm going to select the bottom lid and push it a bit up, just a touch. Push it a bit forward. This is not going to be very, very pronounced, because usually you cannot do that a lot. If you try, even with your own eyes, you won't have the ability to push the eyelid that far. So it's okay. You can see it's just a tiny motion. If we need it. Okay. So now what I want to do is to, of course, mirror those shapes. So in order to mirror shapes in Blender, what you can do is you can select the state where you want to mirror. So we are going to mirror this one, so we are creating a shape that corresponds to this one. In order to do this, we can go in the arrow there and click on New Shape from Mix. So it's going to create exactly the same shape key. So if I'm removing this one and I'm moving this one, you can see that I've basically copied my shape key. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, Mirror Shape Key. And you can see that now it's on the other side. Okay, so reactivate this one. Let's do the same process with the correction. I'm going to push it to 1. I'm going to click new shape from mix, top eyelid correct.l. If I deactivate the right, you can see that it's still the same shape key. And now mirror shape key. Boom, it's on the other side. Let's do that with the bottom eyelid. Remember to put everything to 0 when you're creating a new shape from mix. So the bottom eyelid is 100%. New shape from mix, but eyelid.l. And mirror this shape key. Mirror. Okay. So now we have all the shape keys that we need. Just going to put 0 here. So in order to create an easier control for the animator, we are going to add some custom properties to drive those shape keys. So in order to do this, what we will be doing is on the rig, on the head bone in pose mode, we are going to add custom properties. So in the bone here, let's add 4 properties. The first one is going to be top eyelid.l from 0 to 1. Then top eyelid.r from 0 to 1. Then for bottom eyelid.l from 0 to 1. And here bot eyelid.r from 0 to 1. So you can see that the sliders appears here. I can select them all and press 0 to push them back to 0. So now what we want to do is for the top eyelid first, we are going to create a new driver and we're going to copy as new driver. And in the shape keys here for the top eyelid, we are going to paste the driver. And now if I'm selecting this bone, the head bone, and moving this control, you can see that the eye is going to close. But the issue is that it's not moving also the correction that we want when it's 0.5. So remember that when it's 0.5 here, I want the correction to add some bulge on the shape keys. So I want to activate the correct shape keys, the correction shape keys to 1. So in order to do this, I will let it at 0.5 here, and I will also in the shape keys select the correct here eyelid, and I will paste the driver in the same way. The problem is that now the slider is just a 1-to-1 mapping, meaning that it's 0.5 in the correction shape keys, but when it's 0.5 here, we want the shape keys to be 1 in the correction slider. So we will have to find a way to map this value to 1 when it is 0.5 and back to 0 when this is 1. Okay, so you can see that now the bulge is not working really well. So in order to do this, what I will do is I will open the driver editor in this window. So we are going to open the driver editor there, and I'm going to select my mesh, and you can see that here we have our 2 shape keys, or 2 drivers, sorry. So for I'm going to hide the first one, which is the top eyelid, and this curve is representing the curve for the correction. And you can see that for now our value is at 0.5. What I want to do is at the end here for this key. So I'm going to zoom out, sorry, for this key. I want it to be at 0, so I'm going to put the value at 0. Okay, not the value, it's at frame 1. The value is 0 here, sorry. And now I will select the handles of my values, and you can see that it starts changing the value. Imagine that here we are at 0.5. This is the value of the slider, 0.5. And when it's 0.5, we want the curve here to touch 1. Okay, so what we can do is we can make this tangent a bit longer like this, and we can make it touch the one value, and you can see the slider here is changing, and when it's reaching 1, it means that it's okay. Okay, so now the cool thing is that when this line behind is playing, this one is creating this motion. Okay, so it's basically activating to 1 the value when it's 0.5 and deactivating the correction shape when it's moving to the other side. So if we look at the shape key for this one, if I'm moving the eyelid, you can see it's working pretty well with the bulge in action. Okay, we're just going to copy that. So in order to do that, we are going to recreate exactly the same thing. What we can do to save some time is to go in the drivers that are already set up there. We can copy this driver, the first one for the top lid.l. We can apply it to the top lid.r by pasting the driver. We can do the same thing with the corrective shape and paste. So now, of course, when we select this and we move the right, nothing happens. But if I move the top lid, both shape keys are working. We just have to change the name in the driver. So here, for the top lid.r in the driver section, you can see this is the path to the slider. We can just change the .r here, and same thing for here, the .r. It's the name of the slider. So now if we go there, on the head, we have the other one working, and this one working with the same idea. Okay, last thing we'll have to do is to select the bot eyelid to do the same behavior for the bot eyelid, and this is going to be really easy because we have only one shape key. So we're going to copy as a new driver for the bot eyelid.left, select the mesh, bot eyelid.left, paste the driver, and let's do the same for the last one, bot eyelid.r, and copy as new driver and paste it in the final situation, in the final shape keys. Let's move here to a 3D viewport again, and now we should be able to animate really simply the eyes. So you can close the eye like this with the top, and the bot eyelid.r, you can, as you see, move it a bit higher, and you have a blink. You can really easily create different shapes like this, and of course you can animate those sliders, and this will be good enough for what we have to do. Sometimes animators like to also have controllers on the head. I think that the less thing we have on the facial features on the face, the better it is for animating. If you look at rigs from Pixar Animation Studio, you can see that they have controllers that are following the skin of the characters. This is too advanced for this tutorial. Maybe I will cover that kind of things for another tutorial, but I think it's better if we separate the facial features from the mesh. We want to see always the mesh. And talking about that, I'm going to, in order to finalize the mesh, basically here I'm going to zero out everything. In order to finalize the rig, what I want to do is I want to add some colors, and I want to hide the bones that I will never touch. So those bones here and the eyes, I will never touch them, so I'm going to press M and move it to a different bone layer. Layers for the bones are there, as you can see, and they are completely available to you. If you want both of them, you press Shift and you access to both of them. But this is the only one that we are going to manipulate. Okay. One other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add colors for my layers, for my bones. So I'm going to create bone groups, 3 bone groups. The first one is going to be called center, or default, sorry. Then we have left, and then we have right. So the default group here is going to be by default blue, the left is going to be red, and the right is going to be green. And what I want to do is I want to select everything that is going to be on the left. I'm going to assign it to the left. Everything going to be on the right, I'm going to assign it to the right, and everything else, so to the center, I'm going to assign the default group. And now I have shapes that are colored. And the last thing that we can do is we can add some custom shapes for our visuals, so we can replace the visual of the bones. So we are going to create 2 custom shapes mainly, one circle and one circle, in fact, only one for now. So let's add a circle like this, and we are going to connect the 2 center like this by pressing F, creating a line like this. This is going to help us orient the shape. And this shape I'm going to press M and move it in a new collection called shapes. Okay, so it's now separated. And this circle is going to be called, usually we call WGT for widget circle. And what I can do with this shape is I can select, for instance, my head, and I can go in the option for the bone, and in the viewport display I can say I want a custom object and I want a circle. You can see that it is not aligned perfectly in the right orientation, so what I can do is I can rotate my shape in edit mode 90 degree like this, and now it's going to be aligned in a better way, and I can use this controller instead of the block. Same thing for this one. I'm going to use the custom shape widget, but you can see it's very small, sorry, so I can scale it like this. This is going to help us use the pelvis. Usually for the pelvis I'm not doing a shape like this, I'm more doing like a V shape, but for our purposes here it's going to be fine. And for the ears I'm going to try to change it for the widget too. Probably it's going to be much nicer. Let's do that for everything. Widget circle. For the roots, usually for the root we do another type of shape, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to model a shape that will be symmetrized, so let me symmetrize this, mirror on the X and the Z axis, and I'm going to extrude here something like this to represent the direction of the root. This is going to be called, this shape is going to be called widget root. I can select this bone, I can go in the viewport display of the bone and put the widget root, and as you can see it's not aligned in this case, so I'm going to rotate it back. I'm going to apply the mirror, and I'm going to apply here the rotation and scale. So this is the original orientation, and in this case I can even scale it a bit more so it's wider. Okay, so this is the root of my character. Now for the eyes, let me try to add the widget root again because I think it's fun. So yes, I'm going to add the widget root, and I'm going to scale it to something like 0.2. Same thing for this one, widget root 0.2. And for this one, I'm going to add the widget circle. Now I'm going to create another shape again. So I'm going to duplicate this one, and I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to select those points and press O for the proportional editing, and I'm going to scale this like this, create a sort of mask. I'm going to remove this edge, and this is going to be widget eye master, and I'm going to select this bone again and in pose mode, and I'm going to add eye master, and of course I need to apply the rotation, rotate it 90 degree and apply the rotation, and this is going to be matched normally. I can scale it a bit, and also in edit mode what I can do is I can put the center of this bone in the center of those ones. So I'm going to select those two bones, press cursor to selected, and I'm going to shift this bone to the center by pressing selection to cursor, and this is quite weird actually. So let's do that again. Shift C, cursor to selected, and I want and I want this this bone to be okay, so no, in fact I'm going to lower down this until it matches. Oh yes, the root in fact should be at the same location. So you know what, I'm going to select both of the root, press SZ0 to flat my scale on the same axis, and it should align everything. Okay, so now I have a target that is better looking for my shapes. Sometimes it's also a good idea to add thickness to your shapes. So for instance, you can add I think it's called the skin modifier, and you can change the weight by selecting all your vertices inside and pressing Ctrl A. It's going to change the weight, and I don't remember if, yes, it's creating a shape like this. You can see it's sometimes much easier to see. So we're going to do this for all of our shapes. So go back in object mode, select this shape. I'm going to make it slightly less thick. I'm going to repeat the same process here, add a skin modifier, press Ctrl A to lower down the size here, select this shape and press Ctrl A and press a new modifier, add a new modifier called skin, select everything inside and Ctrl A to change the thickness of the shape. And now when we select the rig, we have this much nicer looking shapes. Okay, it's maybe still too thick, so I'm going to select everything and scale again. And this too. I don't like when it's too much present. And the last thing that you can do is also go in the viewport display object and remove the in front option for your rig. So now it should, when you press Alt Z, you should see your rig, but the geometry is not inside. Okay, maybe this shape is a bit small, so I'm going to scale it here, and maybe this one too, like this. And I think that now we have something quite okay. Remember, for your widget to remove the render visibility, you can also remove the viewport visibility, because everything there will be replaced in the bone. It's still visible for the bones, but it's not visible as a mesh. So now everything should work properly, I think. We have finished the rig for this character. At least it's a very simple rig. One thing that I don't like also is to see the relationship lines. To remove them, you can go in the view, I think, and you can go that's not view, sorry, it's in the object visibility. No, I don't remember where it is. Item, it's somewhere, maybe it's in the scene. It's called relationship lines. Oh, now it's in the overlays here. So you can go in the overlays and you can remove a relationship lines, and you see it removes the parenting lines. And with that, we have our rig ready to be animated. I hope this part was not too complex. I really encourage you to follow it again if you had any trouble. Of course, with more time, we could achieve a much better rig, but for the time we have, I think it's going to be fine. Okay. Before going on, I just noticed something in the leg that bothers me. You see that the geometry is like merging in this case, and this is probably due to the smooth operator. So if we go there and we deactivate it, you can see that we have a much better shape for the leg, but not for the rest of the body. So what we'll do is we will add in the protect smooth modifier, we will remove the leg from the smooth operator. So let's activate back this operator, and let's select the legs. So we are going to select the center loops like this. Press Ctrl plus, add this, and this is going to be added to the Protect Smooth group. As you can see, we should now not use the smooth for the leg, which is better because we now have much better deformations here, and we will do probably the same for the ear. Yes. So let's select the point for both ears, Ctrl plus multiple time until here, and let's add this to the weight to create a much better shape for the ear. You can see it works much better. Okay. I'm also going to add more segments in those bones. So 5, 6 is going to be better, I think. It's going to add much more detail to the curve, but be careful not adding too much segments to bendy bones, as sometimes they can make really bad deformations. But in this case, it's okay, I think. Maybe we can also add one more in the spine. Before animating this character, there is one thing that I want to polish. It's the UVs for the eyes, because now when the eyes are closed, the UVs around the orbit are quite stretched. So we are going to correct that by just simply going into the eye controllers, and we are going to take all the sliders by taking the first one and dragging down, and we're going to push everything to the right to close both eyes together. So now what I want to do is go in UV editing, and you can see that here we have a very stretched UV unwrap for the eyes. So we are going to select our character. We're going to select everything by pressing A in edit mode, and now here we are going to select the edges, the edge loops, and we're going to try to accommodate for the stretch. You just need to follow the procedural texture that we've done. So something like this, as you can see, will do a much better job. So I think it's okay for this eye. Let's do exactly the same thing for the other one. It's okay if it's not symmetrical for this part. It's not very important. Of course, there are better ways to correct the UVs. You could have just re-unwrap the UVs and correct the texture for the ambient occlusion, but I don't want to spend too much time for that, so this is going to be okay for what we are going to do. And this is why usually we model the character with the eye closed. It's for having better deformations for the UVs when the eyes are closed. So next time if you want to model the eyes with a closed shape, you will have to spend much more time doing your shape keys, but it's actually worth it if you want a more, I would say, polished character. But in this case, it's going to be just alright for us. So I'm going to open back the eyes, and now we're ready to animate this character. So let's go. So we are going to animate a walk cycle for this character. So let's get started. I'm going to first disable the controllers that I don't want to see. So I'm only going to see those ones. And one thing that I want to do in order to ease the process is I also want to take the root and the target for the eyes and move them to a second layer. So I only watch while working the really important bones that are the pelvis, the head or the chest, and the ends and the legs. So from the side, I'm going to start defining the different key poses for my character. I'm going to enable here auto keyframe to add keyframes automatically, and I'm going to go in the first key here, and I will be adding my first keyframe. So I'm going to move my character like this, and I'm going to create what we call the contact position. So the contact position is going to be really important for us because it will represent the pose where both feet are on the ground. So as you can see, my controllers are slightly tilted, so I'm going to untilt them like this. And I'm going to, from the opposite view, rotate this one so it creates a kind of foot shape, even though I know it's ridiculous to say that, but I want something more or less like this. I'm going to put my pelvis like this, and I'm going to push the controllers for the feet a bit more inside in the contact pose. Okay, so this will be the contact position. For the contact position, when both legs are in a V shape, usually the pelvis is tilted like this, and we are going to do a double bounce walk cycle, very joyful walk cycle. So the first pose is going to be an up pose, meaning that the legs will be a bit more visible and the character will have a thrust like this upward. And we are also going to counter rotate compared to the pelvis. The pelvis going in this direction and the chest is going to the opposite direction, and this is going to add a bit more joy, if you want, in the character. One thing that we can do too is to very, very slightly turn the pelvis like this, but it's going to be very gentle. For the ears, don't worry right now, we are going to deal with them later. So let's copy this by pressing Ctrl+C. I just realized that I don't have the shortcuts. Let me add them back. And we are going to paste that in the 13th frame in reverse. So in order to reverse a pose, you can press Ctrl+Shift+V, and as you can see, it reverses the pose, which is really useful. And at frame 26, we're going to paste that back, and now I'm going one frame back using the keys, the right and left keys, and I'm going to press Ctrl End to end my animation there. So now I have a cycle. Okay. So now I'm going in the middle to add what we call the down pose, the passing position, and this is going to be still an up position, so we are good to go for that. And I'm going to let me check. I'm going to here approximately to cancel the rotation by pressing Alt R, sorry, and I'm going to place the feet on the ground, and this foot is going to be turned a bit more, and I'm going to make the pelvis go a bit higher so we see a better shape for our feet. And I'm always going to try to make an S shape representing this as a flat shape for the foot, and this one is like this. Okay, so maybe I can put the chest up a bit, and this should be the passing position. So let me copy this passing position to the 19th keyframe in reverse, and you can see that we start to have something that looks like a walk. It's not great, of course, because we need to add the passing position, the down position, sorry. So for the down position, I'm going to plant the foot on the ground like this, it's okay, and I'm going to turn this foot and drag it a bit behind. Or you know what, I'm going to reverse the curve for now, and I'm going to lower the pelvis very much like this to create the thrust, the bounce in the character. Let me select everything, Control C, going to this position, Control Shift V. You notice also that I can label the keyframes, so I'm going to take those one, the contact position, and I'm going to choose this visual so it's more visible. Maybe also the passing position, I can do that, and the rest is going to be maybe blue. I don't care about the real name, I just want different visuals for my keyframes. So you can see that now we start to have something that more or less looks like a walk, but it's maybe time to adjust a bit the visuals. So I'm going here to increase the pelvis a bit, and again mirror. Each time I'm doing something, I need to mirror the corresponding pose on the second foot. So this part basically is the first foot planting on the ground, and this one is the second, okay? And this makes a full complete circle, walk cycle, sorry. Okay, so now at frame 10, I'm going to add another down pose, meaning that the pelvis and the chest are going to go down, and I'm going to have here a reverse shape for the foot, and this feet is going to be inside a bit like this. This is going to create the double bounce effect. So I'm going to select this pose, paste it in mirror, and you can see that we have the double bounce effect. So this is a very common walk in cartoon, and we want, of course, to enable to polish everything. So one thing that I will add is in the passing position here, I will put the leg a bit outward like this. So let me select this and copy it in mirror, Control Shift V, and you can see it adds a bit more attitude to the leg. I can also here start the rotation a bit more. This creates a more interesting pose. And for this extended pose, I will try to tilt a bit more the pelvis like this. It creates just a small touch, you know, just a small accent on the rest. And in this case, I'm going to also rotate this a bit in the same direction, just to push the accent even more on the chest. Okay, so I think we are in a good direction. I want to focus a bit more on the foot. So now here and there, I want to make the foot touch the ground. This is the down position. So in both cases, the foot should touch the ground. So let me just find an edge that will work well. In this case, this one is okay. So I'm going to copy this pose again back to its mirror pose. Here, going there, we see that the stretch is too much, so maybe adjust. Here in this case you can see that it's very stretched, so maybe I can lower a bit the rotation for the curl. So let me copy this pose here and this pose right after. We can see a snapping motion that is quite nice. And I'm going now to only look at the rotation of my gizmo. You can see that here, when it rotates, maybe I'm losing too much rotation. So I'm going to copy this pose and removing a bit of rotation when going forward like this. So the funny aspect of this character is that it's standing on the feet basically, but it's hard for him to, or her, I think it's him or him, to walk. Okay, so maybe one thing that I can do to make it a bit more realistic looking in terms of weight is maybe I can push everything down for 0, maybe 0.01. So let's try GZ 0.01 minus, sorry, GZ minus 0.02. This is going to lower down the Y motion. On this key, I think it's going to be better, but in order to do that for all the keyframes, I can simply go press Ctrl Tab and go selecting the curves that corresponds to the Y location, I think in this case. So if I'm selecting the Y location by selecting my curve here, I can press L to select all the key, and you can see that it's this keyframe. I can see that this is probably the keyframe for the pelvis, so I can move them both down, and you can see it works like a charm, like this. Okay, while we are here, maybe we can try to tweak a bit those curves. So here, maybe I can, in fact, maybe I can select all those keys. And no, I think it's okay like this. In fact, let's try to, no, in fact, the curves are right now are pretty good for me, at least. Okay. So I like when the character is more close to the ground. It looks much more funny to me. Okay. Maybe we can increase. So I'm going to press Ctrl Tab to go back in my timeline. Maybe I can here, in the case of the passing position, maybe I can increase and higher and make the pelvis a bit higher. You can see it creates a more cartoony effect. I can also maybe anticipate here the effect a bit by turning that slightly before. Always copying the previous position, remember to do that. And because the character is because the character has 2 bones, maybe I'm going to try to reverse the curve there. It looks quite nice, but it's too much, so I'm going to remove a bit of that. And you can see it looks in the final result, it gives him more an attitude that is is quite funny. So to animate the ears, what we're going to do is first place them. We are going to make them bounce side to side, so I'm going to rotate them like this. Maybe one being more up than the other, like this. Let's try like this. I'm going to paste this frame 13 and 26. Okay, it looks like this. You can see that the motion is linear because this is not FK bones. With bendy bones, when you are animating from one pose to another, the bones are going straight from one bone to another. Not bendy bones, sorry, with the stretch 2 constraint that we've created. Because the bone is free floating in the air, it's not describing an arc. So what we are going to do is select both ears and push them at frame 6 and 29. So you can see that now it's a bit better. It's still not the best. What we're going to try here is to counter the curve here, position 4 and frame 4, sorry, and here I'm going to do the same thing but in reverse, or maybe to the other position, sorry. Something like this will be more suitable for us. And here, frame 10, we're going to do the same thing but in reverse. And frame 22, like this. Okay, so you can see a slight hiccup somewhere. For now, I don't know where it is. So let's first move this frame to frame 7 instead. And I think here this is pushed too far. So frame 7 and frame 16 maybe here. We're going to lower down frame 19, sorry, we're going to lower down everything. Okay. So let's take the first frame and make sure it's the same in the middle. Ctrl-Shift-V, it's okay. This one, oh, I have a small gap here, so I'm going to select both of them. Ctrl-C, Ctrl-Shift-V. Oh, I just realized that the shortcuts are not there anymore, so let's do that. And maybe frame 7 here. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, this one is the second one, so I'm going to paste it there, it's okay. This one is the up, Ctrl-Shift-V, and the last one should be okay. Maybe the gap is just in the visual of the bones. If I'm looking at only one bone, it looks quite fine actually. The only thing I'm not really happy with is that the B bone inside is rotating, but only on the top. So let me bring back the B bone and let me see if I can, in edit mode, if I can change a bit the is in, is out, so it works better. So let's first do that in this mode to see if it adds something. So maybe we can push a bit the out, I guess. So okay, let's bring back that to 0, and let's, in edit mode, push the out to 1.2 maybe, and 1.2 here, and 1.2 here. And let's see if it did a better job. Yes, it works much better. We have a much better flappy ear motion. Okay, let's take our controller back. And one thing that I want to do too is now I also want to be sure that from the side and the ear are in this position. So I'm going to widen the gap between them. And in the passing position here, I want to, basically with those keyframes, I want to create the arc back. So as you can see, the controllers are not the best in this case, but it's manageable anyway. So in this case, I just want to push this one a bit forward and backward, and I'm going to which frame was it? It was frame let me go back. I don't remember the frame it was. Okay, I think it was frame 10. So let's move that a bit back and this a bit forward because it's going to finish the arc. And frame 10 means 22 in the other side. Okay, so now I have a better arc like this. Maybe the curve is snapping too much. As you can see, it breaks here, clack, clack, clack. And I don't want that. At that here, you can see, bam, the change is pretty much hard. So let me decrease this a bit only by changing rotations. So I'm going to replace my keys. And here, same thing, I'm going to remove a bit of the curve. Frame 10, so 22 is the mirror key. Okay, I feel it's much better like this. So from the top, you can also see that the head is not moving at all. It looks very static. So we are going to try, first let's save a new copy of this. And we are going to try to now animate the head a bit. So it's going to be very, 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 very subtle. But when the character will be in this position, maybe we can make it back a bit. So let's try this. Then okay, maybe it's not that great after all. So it's hard to manage here because the character is not moving forward, so we'll have to play with our rig a bit to find a solution to this not so appealing motion. But in fact, you know, because the character is walking on its place, maybe if just as a test I animate over 1 foot the root motion just to see. I need to put the keyframes as linear by pressing T and linear. Maybe it's, you know, in fact, maybe it's working quite fine in our case. So, okay, I'm going to cancel the root motion. And maybe from the top I can tweak a bit here and there my poses. Let me check from the top. The head is turning, but it's not moving, so maybe I can try to push that forward. So on the z-axis, I'm going to push the head a bit forward like this, just as a small test. Push it less on the extremes there. Yeah, it gives something that could be interesting, even though it's not very logical. So it's going forward. Then maybe here we need to push it backward a bit on the y-axis. Let's copy this pose backward. It adds a very, you know, bad guy motion, so it could be interesting. You know what? I'm going to enter in curve mode, curve editor, by pressing Ctrl Tab, and I'm going to look for the axis that is going to be forward. I think if I display the axis, it's the z-axis. So the z-axis is the axis that goes forward for this bone. So I'm going to hide the quaternion and everything else here. I'm just going to take the z-axis, z location, And you can see with the motion it goes forward, backward, forward, backward. So I can remove those keys here to make it more, as you can see, to make it more, how can I say, logical with the curves. Maybe you can, you know what, I can also try to, by pressing L I can select the curve. I can also try to, by pressing V, choose the free handle type, and I'm going to try to exaggerate as it's going to be very intense, that it creates a more snappy head. Let's scale this here. No, it's not good in this case, but anyway, I'm going to try different shapes here and there, trying to make a more round curve. Maybe like this, it's interesting. Creates a more creates a more disco pose. And of course, if I want to lower down the effect, I can scale this curve on the y-axis. As you can see, it works. And if I'm moving the curve back and forth, you can see that I can reverse. I can push everything back and forth, making it quite funny. Okay, so I'm going to push it slightly backward, like this. And now I'm going to work on the same curve, but for the pelvis. So I'm going to hide here all my curves except the Y location that I want to try to animate. So on the first keyframe, I'm going to place it backward just a bit. On the 30th keyframe, I'm going to do the same, but in reverse, forward. And frame 26, I'm going to copy this keyframe, so Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. So let me select this curve, hide everything else by pressing Shift-H, and let me try to remove all this thing. So you can see it creates a belly motion that is quite interesting. Maybe let's add at frame 7 another keyframe here, only on this curve, so pressing only on the selected channel. Maybe I can try to create the same thing that we've done previously, like a motion forward. No, it's not doing great. Maybe we can do a double bounce. As you can see, it creates a very funny effect, but not quite what I want. Maybe I can just scale a bit this handle to create a more smooth effect. And I will of course lower it down. I don't want it to be that much present. And if I want to select my curve, you can see that I can push forward the pelvis, and I can push it backward too if I need to create a more scary kind of pose. So let me push it a bit higher like this, and I will also recenter my keys. I think like this it's going to be fine. Maybe I will try also to rotate the pelvis. No, it's going to be too much. So okay, let's stick with that. The other thing that we want to animate is maybe we want to desynchronize the ears. So I'm going back into my curves. As you can see, it's quite a mess here because in terms of maybe I can try to fix that a bit. Let me check. If I remove those keys, no, I cannot do that because I need to compensate for the stretch to constraint. So let's do that for now. It was not ideal in terms of rig, but it was meant to do a lot of other stuff. Usually in this case you will have to create what we call a switch FK-IK, but in this case it will be a switch between this type of bone and an IK version of it. It will do a much better job, but in our case I think we're going to be fine with what we have now. But anyway, what we will do is we'll desynchronize the ears. So in this case, I know that the frame after the last one will be this one. So I select it and I'm copying it right after like this. And I'm selecting all my keyframe and I'm desynchronize it by one frame. As you can see, it adds a bit more life to it. I can even do it twice, 2 keyframes. No, just one was fine in my case. And now one thing that I usually like to add before I need to save, of course, but one thing that I really like to add usually is to just work on my main keyframes, but just change a tiny bit, the angles, so the walk is not purely symmetrical. So you know, I'm going to add in some extremes, you know, I change a bit things here and there, just as a slight adjustment, only on one footstep. This creates a less obvious, I will say, a less obvious how can I say, a less mechanical walk. So I'm going to grab this curve back, and maybe it's still too much, so, and maybe I can scale it a bit more on this axis. I don't want it to be too much present, so like this I think it's much better. Okay, and again, I said I wanted to desynchronize both footsteps. So here in the down position, I'm going to increase the down, so we don't have the same down position. In the extreme here, maybe I can extend the leg in this case. Not too much, but just enough. Something like this gives more life to the character. Okay, one thing that we can animate too is the eyes. We want the target to follow, it's okay. But we are going to select the head, and here in the items, we are going to animate the eyelid. So I'm going to go back into the dop sheet here, click on the summary icon here. As you can see, the colors are very annoying because of the bone group, so we are going to deactivate the colors by going show group colors here. And what I want to see is those 4 things. So what I can do is basically I can disable everything else just to stick my head here, and I want to create a blink. So to create a blink, I'm going to also remove all the keys that were added there, and to create a blink we are going to select everything here and press 0 and press I on it to add keyframes for that, as you can see. And we are going to go a few frames later, push everything down. Okay, so this was not registered for whatever reason, so let's go back there and open the eye back. This is quite strange. If error evaluating numbers, so 0, 0, 0, 0, and here 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. Okay. So let me add my keys back. So here I want 0. Quite strange behavior. I'm going to add a keyframe, and here I want 1, and I'm going to insert a key. I don't know why it's not working. Let's add everything back. Maybe it's a bug. Okay, it was a bug due to that. This is quite annoying actually. Maybe it's because the bone is... It's not activated anyway. So what we can do is to finish this blink, we can select this and make it last 1 frame and reopen and select those frames and push them back. So you can see it creates a blink like this. So the timing of the blink will define how the character is reacting. So if you have a more long blink, as you can see, the character looks more chilled. But in our case, we want it to be very excited, so we are going to do a very fast blink like this. And also, one thing that is quite nice to do with cartoon characters is to offset the blink. So I'm going to select the R, both R channel. So those keyframes plus those keyframes by pressing B, and I'm going to offset them by 1 frame. And you can see that it will create a dunk dunk. How can I say that? A latency. I can even push the latency a bit more, and you can see that in this case it can work too. Maybe I can select everything, put my cursor there, and scale my blink to elongated. I think like this. Maybe it's too much. You know what? I'm going to scale it back one more. Maybe like this. Look, it looks fine. And okay, I'm going to save. And now I think to finish that, of course we can spend a lot more time animating this character, but to finish this tutorial, I want to add a studio lighting and to add different setups and to render a small animation. Okay, so to do that, I'm